We need one more JavaScript aside before we look at exactly how module exports require and all of that works. It's immediately invoked function expressions, or IIFEs. This is extremely important to understand properly and a fundamental aspect of how modules actually work. Remember that when we are talking about modules, we are not just talking about reusable blocks of code. We are also talking about code that's protected, that is, the code we write inside a module doesn't unintentionally impact any other code that we have written within our software. And so essentially, we are talking about the scope. Alright, what's the scope? Essentially, at its most basic, scope means where in code you have access to a particular variable or function. So have a variable, perhaps it's a number, string, or an object, or have a function. Where else in my code can I access it? Alright, so let's take a quick look at immediately invoked function expressions and how they affect the scope. Let's go back to my app.js file, and this time we'll show something interesting. What is an immediately invoked function expression? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. I could have a function, but we have seen that I can do a function expression in which that can be anonymous. Let's make it anonymous. That is, I have no name and it will create a function on the fly. However, just sitting here by itself, JavaScript engine will view it as a regular function statement. That is, a normal kind of basic kind of first function that you might learn to try and create. However, we don't want a basic function because that won't give us the extra functionality that we need. What we need is a function that's created and available to us in an immediate sort of sense. As if I was create a string, let's say this is a string, and then I can call a function, let's say char at, or I can create a number and then call a function. So I need a function and then immediately be able to run the function. I can do that by telling the engine that this is meant to be an expression, and there is a few ways to do that. The most common way is to simply wrap this in parentheses. Let's do it. That means it's an expression now, not just a function statement. I'm telling the engine will interpret this as expression. Alright, now I have a function object, I'm holding it, and I can keep going. I can keep doing things with it like invoke it, so I can put parentheses right here, and then I'll put a semicolon here. So I create a function and then immediately invoke it. So this is a function expression and I've immediately invoked it. So it's an immediately invoked function expression. And let's say I create a variable called name and I set it to Reza, and then I will console.log it. And let's say outside the immediately invoked function expression, I have another variable var. I'm gonna name it to name also, and it's set to Ali. And then I'm gonna print it again. Now, if I run this, what do you think will happen? Well, I run it here, node app.js, and I get Reza and then Ali. So they both run. Now, what if I put the declaration of Ali above here, above immediately invoked function expression? So this will run, and then this immediately invoked function expression run, and then this print will run. Now, what do you think will happen? let's go ahead and run it again. No app.js. And I still get Reza and Ali. In other words, the creation of this variable, this name variable, within this immediately invoked function expression impacted in no way the name, this name variable that I declared it before this. And why? Because of scope in JavaScript. Whatever you create, whatever variables you create, functions you create, within a function in JavaScript is protected within that function. It's only accessible within that function. It's scoped to that function. This is intentional. And as a result, it's the way that JavaScript developers for a long time have been kind of faking what a module should be. In other words, we can wrap our code in an immediately invoked function expression and make sure that it doesn't unintentionally affect anything outside of it. The console.log gets the name that was intended, not the one that I created inside of here. So this was in a separate JavaScript file, and I loaded this JavaScript file, this immediately invoked function expression. It wouldn't surprise me and change the value of name. This variable here is protected and completely separate from the variables that are declared, that are created inside of any particular function. And I use an immediately invoked function expression just as a shorthand instead of having to create a full function and then execute it. I can simply load this JavaScript file and this immediately invoked function expression runs, which means my code inside the function runs, but again, it's protected. So this is an immediately invoked function expression, and that's why we use it. I can actually use a function like I normally would. So let's say I want a last name here to be able to pass to this function. Well, I can pass it to the function where I invoke it right here, and let's say it is Arjmandi. So I could then say I want to log it, last name. The last name will have this value that I passed here. It is same as normal functions. So I can run that again, node app.js, and here it is. I can see Reza and then Arjmandi and then Ali. An immediately invoked function expression which behaves in a module-like fashion because of scoping in JavaScript being scoped within the function. That is was created in the function is only accessible within the function. Then I'm able to use it with the same intent that I might use a module. And this is actually what Node.js takes advantage of. Alright, so now we are ready to answer the question. How does require and module exports, how do modules in Node.js actually work? And then how can I use them to their full advantage? Let's see.